Early Show by Jane Clayson, who asked her concerning 9/11, the attacks on the World Trade Center and so forth. How could God let something like this happen? Anne Graham gave an extremely profound and insightful response. Well, she said, I believe God is deeply saddened by this, just as we are. But for years, we have been telling God to get out of our life, get out of our schools, get out of our bedroom, get out of our public places. We've evicted God in a country that says in God we trust. Should we be surprised then that misfortune befalls us? How can we expect God to give us his blessing and his protection if we demand that he get out? In light of recent events, terrorist attacks, school shootings, etc. I think it all started when Madalyn Murray O'Hair complained that she didn't want prayer in our schools. And we said, okay. And then someone said, you better not read the Bible in schools. Well, after all, the Bible says, thou shalt not kill and thou shalt not steal and love your neighbor as yourself. And so we said, well, okay. Of course, Dr. Spock said we shouldn't spank our children when they misbehave because, after all, their little personalities could be warped and we might damage their self-esteem. Of course, poor Dr. Spock's son committed suicide. But we said an expert ought to know what he's talking about, so we said, okay. Then someone said teachers and principals better not discipline our children when they misbehave. School administrators said no faculty member in this school better touch a student when they misbehave because we don't want any bad publicity and we certainly don't want a lawsuit. And we said, okay. And then someone said, well, let's let our daughters have abortions if they want, and they won't even have to tell their parents. And we said, okay. And then some wise school board member said, well, since boys will be boys and they're going to do it anyway, let's give our sons all the condoms they want so they can have all the fun they want, and we don't have to tell their parents where they got them. And we said, okay. And then some of our top elected officials said, well, it doesn't matter what we do in private as long as we do our jobs. Agreeing with them, we said, well, it doesn't matter to me what anyone, including the president, does in private, as long as I have a job and the economy is good. And we said, okay. And then someone said, let's print magazines with pictures of nude women and call it wholesome. Down-to-earth appreciation of their beauty. And we said, okay. And then someone took that appreciation a step further and published pictures of children, and then further made them available on the internet, and even the Supreme Court couldn't get that all right. And we said, okay. And then the entertainment industry said, let's make TV shows and movies that promote profanity, violence, and promiscuous sex. Let's record music that encourages rape, drugs, murder, suicide, and satanic themes. It's just entertainment. It has no adverse effect. Nobody takes it seriously anyway. And so we said, okay. And now we're asking ourselves why our children have no conscience, why they don't know right from wrong, and why it doesn't bother them to kill strangers, their classmates, their parents, and themselves. Probably, if we think about it long and hard enough, we can figure it out. I think it might have a great deal to do with we reap what we sow. And that is the state of affairs. That's the way it is. You can't get away from it. That's what has happened. This is no coincidence. When you and I were younger, we didn't have this. We did not. When I was a boy, the worst thing you could do was get in a fight, maybe, or, when you were a senior, drink some beer or something. There were no drugs. Not like today. Something has gone very wrong. And I believe much of it has to do with what's going on inside the church. I have never, since I've been a priest, thank God, I've never been interested in a career. I have no ambition. And as one old gal said, "Father, I know your greatest gift." And I said, "What's that, honey?" And she said, "Well, it's not preaching." I said, "Oh, it's not?" She said, "No, it's not preaching." He said, "Your greatest gift is that you don't give a fat rat's who likes it and who doesn't." And I said, "That's right, I don't." And she said, that you can't be a preacher. I'm sorry. You cannot be a preacher unless you have total disinterest. It doesn't make a bit of difference to me whether you like it or you don't like it. It's the same. It's the same. If I were preaching at the Vatican, I wouldn't be preaching any differently. It is what it is. I think the reason we have a mess out there is because we have a mess in here. We have a mess in the country and in the world because we have a mess in the church. That's why we have failed miserably to live up to the nobility and the dignity of our transcendent vocation. It's my fault. That's what I have to say, Indian. It's my fault. All the mess out there is my fault. Why is it my fault? Because I have failed to be as holy as I should be. That's why everyone has to say that to themselves. The buck stops here. Have I prayed as much as I should have? Have I lived with the intensity of a son or daughter of God? Do I live a life of virtue, striving every day for perfection? I'm dedicating this series, by the way, to all those wonderful families, those moms and dads and kids who fight the good fight every day, who try to do the best they can do, who struggle in a neo-pagan environment.